Welcome back. In today's episode, we have an incredible guest for you today, Mike Agugliaro. He's the founder and owner of Gold Medal Services and CEO Warrior. He's going to discuss in today's episode what it was like to struggle with a new company that couldn't even get to $1 million after 10 years and how he transformed it into a company that is going to do $30 million this year with 190 employees. You're rocking and rolling in your main business. Why in the world would you ever decide to set up a side business, a coaching business, to train others what you do? Mike will tell you why he set up this side business, CEO Warrior. Oh, and by the way, he'll do $6 million in coaching alone this year. You think he's providing massive value for his clients? You betcha.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast
with your host, Thor Conklin.
Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy. Mike Agugliaro is the badass of the home services industry, breaking the rules and blazing a trail for other service business owners to follow. He's on a mission to help service business owners achieve more wealth, freedom, and market domination. Mike has played a key role for more than 2 decades as the co-owner of New Jersey's largest and most respected home services company, Gold Medal Services. In the last 10 years, Mike's business-growing acumen has taken the company from a business of making less than $1 million a year to making more than $30 million a year with over 190 employees. He founded CEO Warrior, a coaching business that he started to help other service business owners create a business that works for them, not them working for the business. He'll do $6 million in this business, not bad for a side coaching business that is less than 4 years old. He is the author of 4 books, The Secrets of Business Mastery, Secrets of Leadership Mastery, Secrets of Communication Mastery, and The 9 Pillars of Business Mastery. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today. I want to start off, you're 2 guys driving around in vans, working 90 hours a week, and you just say, no more. And he said, there's got to be a better way, and you decide to look at some other businesses. Bring us back to that time.
Yeah, so it's me and my business partner, Rob Zadati, for, 11, 12 years, humping it, doing everything ourselves. We're the bottle maker, bottle washer, and everything in between. And we get to the point where I tell everybody there's 2 turning points. The one is I'm having a baby boy, my first child, and I get that realization the night I go home. And I'm going to be an absentee dad, right? I'm going to work myself to death like my dad is. Now, my dad's still alive, but I never seen him enough as a kid. That was the first realization. And the second one was my business partner, Thor, saying, he came in one day and he says, I'm done, right? And I thought he was sick. I thought he was going home. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll see you tomorrow, Rob. And he's like, no, I'm done. I'm toast. I'm burnt out. I can't take it anymore. And I know maybe some listeners can relate to those moments, those dirty thoughts where you just think like, okay, I'm finished. So it was that time, Thor, that really turned us to say, okay, it's the great divide, like go to the left, we accept defeat, or go to the right. What could we do? Who could we find? Who could we learn from that already figured this stuff out? And that put us down that road to solve this big problem. What was making us stay stuck?
And what did you learn from these companies that you looked at? I know you looked at Disney, you looked at Zappos. What did you extrapolate from them?
When we started to look at what to learn, I would say we had purposeful thought, Thor. So we said to ourselves, well, wait, we want to have a company that's going to make the greatest experience for the customer. So we said, well, who's got the greatest experience in the world? Well, Disney, right? I've been there, 6, 7 times with my family, and it's always a happy place. It's almost becomes this addictive thing because you want to go there because only happiness exists. That's why we went to Disney. When we went to Zappos is because I wanted to figure out how people on the phone, how did they, and Zappos had these core values, and I wanted to figure that out. So everybody we went to learn, and I'd be glad to share more people we learned from, was for a purpose: solve a problem that I seen in front of us.
And you mentioned something very important here. Solve a problem that you see. So often entrepreneurs don't see the problem. How did you identify the problems?
Yeah, so when we started just going on a quest, started reading books, and I started following different mentors. And when you hear a message enough about yourself, and it's you that's holding yourself back, and mindset and all these different things, I think it just comes to a point, Thor, where if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck, and I was the one who was the duck. I just couldn't see it. So after I heard that message a couple times, me and Rob said to ourselves, I kind of remember the conversation. It's a little fuzzy, 11, 12 years ago when we were under $1 million. We said, holy crap, it's us that's holding us back.
Yeah, it always is. It's always the guys at the head that are the roadblock. So bring us back. You're working for the first 10 years trying to get up to $1 million?
Yeah, and I don't even know, Thor, I would love to say we were trying to get to $1 million. I don't think we were even, I don't think we were smart enough to even know $1 million was a pillar. I know today a lot of people want to get to their first $1 million. All we wanted to do was just make more money and get a better quality of life. We really didn't put a number of $1 million. Later, I learned that we needed to break through these boundaries,
Here you are, two guys, and you really don't have a business. What you have are basically jobs that you've created for yourself. Now you say, look, I want to create this thing. I want to create a business. What were the next steps that you took? Yeah.
And I would say not only did we create a job, and I don't know if some of the listeners can relate to this or it's just me. I mean, we created a hell.
Of course. We've all been. Yes. I think every entrepreneur's been there.
Yeah. And so the very first step was, so what's broken with me, right? My mindset. A good friend of mine, Todd Gaster, brilliant guy. He says, you can't grow $1 million business with $100,000 mind. And so the first thing we started to do was say to ourselves, well, what skill sets don't we have? Now, we're electricians by trade, so we could wire a house better than anybody. But I mean, I wasn't a master communicator. I wasn't a master leader. I didn't understand marketing operations. So the very first step is look at yourself, look at your personal identity, Thor. So it's like, okay, what is my identity that got me to where I'm at? What does my identity have to become, my skills, my competencies to get me where I want to go? So that's always the first step.
And what was holding you back the most at that point?
Yeah, my own belief, right? My own childhood is what was holding me back. I only had the framework that my dad taught me. You work really hard, you work a lot, you make money, be happy with what you have. And, that's, it's what I was trained to be like as a child.
Yeah, we get stuck into this mindset of let's, work harder, because that's the way to success. And sometimes that keeps us from success.
Yeah.
Because we're in the business as opposed to working on the business. So you find a way to shift from being the guys that are, wiring the houses to hiring people to wire the houses. When you made that shift, what were some of the hurdles that started to come in the way?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big hurdles for me was, really hiring people. How do you find the right people? How do you manage those people? I thought everybody, once my mind changed, everybody would follow my same expectation. Like they would just work as hard as me. They would listen. They would follow directions. So a big hurdle was realizing that, crap, I'm not a good leader. I'm mad that they're not following, but I'm not even setting a good example. So it was that leadership hurdle for me. How do I hire and how do I get people to really follow us to where we want to go?
So let's talk a little bit about that on the hiring. What advice do you have?
Yeah, so, and hopefully I don't get too deep too fast. You'll let me know if I do. But I mean, the thing about hiring today is people are looking for one piece of the hiring. So they're like, oh, I want someone who has a skill set. They're good with a computer, or they're They're good with, they're good at sales. But nobody really spends, and I don't want to say nobody, a lot of people don't understand, well, I got to first understand this perfect avatar of an employee. Most people talk about avatar in marketing, the perfect customer. Well, there's a perfect employee. So the first step I would tell everybody to do is almost like taking clay, like, how do you want this person to be? How old are they? What beliefs do you want them to have? What level of energy and endurance do you want them to have? What skill sets? What competencies? And the interesting thing, Thor, is once you go through this exercise where you build this avatar, like how do they talk? How do they communicate? All of a sudden you become so clear on what you're looking for. I'd be surprised if anybody listened to this, did this exercise, and didn't reach out to you and go, holy crap, Thor, I did the exercise, and the next day, the very perfect person ended up in my world.
That is so interesting. I do the exact same thing with people looking to get into relationships. That's a brilliant idea.
And I'll use the relationship thing because I figured out a couple things. I mean, and if you choose to go there, we can. If not, it's cool too. I figured out, one, how to grow really big business. We did 30 million last year. We started a coaching company, it's just going into our beginning of fourth year. That's doing over 3.5 million. That will do 6 million this year. I've learned not only how to grow these things, Thor, but when you go to the relationship, I learned how to do it, and I'm with my wife over 30 years too. And so the avatar conversation about hiring, it really plays a part in just understanding, well, in order to find something, you have to have clarity around it.
Yes, absolutely. And do you do an avatar for each of the positions within the company?
Yeah, absolutely. For each manager, we got directors. I mean, we're running over 190 employees, and right now we're hiring an average of 10 a week based on our growth. We have an avatar for every department, every section, every leader, and we have it with clarity, because what you find out is as you grow, it's interesting, Thor, you have two ways to kind of figure this out, right? This avatar and stuff, like by design or by default. Most people end up by default. They're like, okay, I got an employee with me 5 years. I've hated them for 4 years. I've done that myself.
Right. Yeah, I've been there, done that.
Once you have that set up and you have that avatar, now it's about creating clarity and alignment on where we're going to go as a company. It's interesting. We had our all company meeting today, just a couple hours ago, where we had over 190 people in a room, and we reminded everybody where we're going. Okay, not only where we're going, we reminded everybody about the avatars in the room and how this looks as a whole. Because once you build one avatar, you have to look at that avatar and say to yourself, well, how does this avatar interact? Because it's, Thor, the one thing that still puzzles me, and it just happened last year. Every time we do a survey, we get the number one thing always, more communication. Like I pray for the day that I do the survey and I get, our communication is so amazing, we don't need to improve it. I hope that happens. But when you look at the avatars, you have to make sure avatars in each department also blend with each other. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me, so you've got these avatars, you've got the people, you're communicating. How's the best way to communicate? How do they want to be communicated to?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, Thor, and a great question for people to listen to, because one, we know that everybody learns a different way. Like, people ask me, I have a 17-year-old, amazing, 6 foot tall, 270-pound son who makes me look like a little baby next to him, full-grown beard, and I got a 14-year-old beautiful daughter. One thing I learned, and this will get to a good point to answer, I took them out of the public school and chose to homeschool them because they were trying to talk to everybody the same way. So how do people learn? Well, when we interview people and we end up bringing them aboard our team, we ask them, Thor, so how is it that you like to communicate? How is it you like to be communicated to? So for some people, it's pictures. For some people, it's words. For some people, it's sounds. And so I think when you start to break the model of one size fits all, you start to get major improvement. And I've learned that with my own children. Like, my son is a gimme stuff, let me touch it, figure it out. My daughter's a very, well, let me read it, let me listen to figure it out. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. So is your correspondence to the entire company, does it blend all those together?
It does. It does blend them all together. But look, when we're dealing with, let's say we're dealing with accounts receivable and accounts payable. Well, there's very rarely somebody in those or HR, those departments that are like, oh, I'm a very visual, because their skill set's very, analytical type position. So for them, put a paper down with a bunch of writing on it, they just salivate over that stuff. So there is some areas you can just use one method. And then there's other areas with my guys, my experts in the field that do plumbing, heating, cooling, electric, or any of the skilled trades. Those we do a very mix of, and we make sure we deliver it so it serves everybody the best way they learn.
So many of my clients want to grow on one hand, but on the other hand, they're like, you know what? I just don't want to give up control. You've got 190 people. You've got people in other people's homes every single day. There's got to be such a level of trust there. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I think you nailed it. It's about trust. First off, the fact you think you're in control is probably a delusion anyway. We float on a ball in space, right? It's just, so there's probably the first things that come to grip is there's no control. The second thing is, just like I was saying, most of the ways we do things, Thor, I always say it's based off of the 13-year-old child inside of you. You've learned not to trust because you've been hurt before. I always just ask myself, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? And when you could kind of look at that and you really understand, I'm just a believer that, I manifest millions of dollars every time I think about building something. If you could just kind of trust your own inside and also question the 13-year-old child, that served you very well at that time. But it's not, you don't need that. It's not serving you anymore. And sometimes you need, someone like yourself to step in and guide people through a process of asking questions. And sometimes people just got to go, hey, like me and Rob Thor, we just said, let's go for broke. You've heard that phrase before. I tell people, we jumped off a cliff. I was okay with one of two things, dying or become extremely successful. I just was not okay living in hell anymore.
Right. There was so much pain. Something had to change.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the partnership, because partnerships can be very challenging for entrepreneurs. How did you manage to create a very successful partnership?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Thor, because I don't want to say the most successful in the world because I don't know everybody, but I'm going to say I'm pretty successful because not only do I have a business partner for 22 years, he's also one of my very best friends. I've also trained them in the early years in martial arts. I've had a business with my wife that was a flower shop. I had another business with someone else. I'm very good at partnerships, but let me give you what I think are some of the fundamentals to create a great partnership. And also, I'll give you the other flip side of the coin, Thor. I am not someone who just goes around telling everybody you should have a partner either. If you're going to create a successful one, here's the deal. You got to have a plan. And you got to have boundaries and clear understandings. A lot of people go into partnerships. It sounds fun, but you don't realize in 2 and 3 years, maybe your kids are grown up, but that partner's having babies. So now you're working longer hours. That person wants to go to the baseball game. Successful partnerships are about looking at how the partnership's being developed today, but also future thinking. How does the partnership, what's it going to look like 3 years, 5 years, 20 years down the road? And there has to be a sense of trust and understanding. The other thing that there should be for a successful partnership is there should be a method where anybody can raise the flag and say, this is not a fit anymore. Me and my partner made the agreement many years ago, and we figured it out right 12 years ago. When we decided to go for broke and go for it, we said to ourselves, because the one thing Thor, my partner, didn't expect is when he said he was done, I said, perfect, we're out. What should we go do now? Because I believe when you have a partnership, same like me and my wife, I believe you're in it together. And then if you decide it's not a fit, you both get out of it. You go do different things. Now, not everybody believes this, Thor, but that's just some of my thinkings about successful partnerships.
And you seem to get your hands on something and see it through. Your execution is unbelievable. For those that do not know you, you need to check this guy out. He is a machine. How do you do it all?
Yeah, so I'm really good at just prioritizing things, and I would say I'm a master at saying no and careful to say yeses, and I know what's really important in my life. So, my family always comes first. There's also my family has an understanding of how I function. I'm somebody who's always going because I'm a servant of the world, so I'm always talking and helping somebody through some kind of problem. I would say the biggest thing is this, and Thor, you probably had a ton of guests talk about this, is look, I'm very clear in my mind, okay? And what that means is, I follow the guidelines for the last, over 30 years. Like I meditate every day. I'm very good at questioning my behaviors. And I'm also live with massive power. I mean, I'm not a crazy nut, but I am a guy that doesn't, I chose 4 years ago not to eat gluten, and I've never drank alcohol, and I've never did drugs or smoked. And so normally, and I'm a tattooed guy, so normally my wife says, you're a purple unicorn. Like they're pretty sure they exist. They never seen anybody like you before, but it's by a choice, Thor. And that's what I would say. Everything is just make a decision to balance, make a decision to say no to things, make a decision to say yes to things.
Yeah, I'm always telling people you can't have everything. You can have anything that you want, but you've got to make some choices. For the last 16 years, I've been driven by the question of why some people achieve amazing results and others don't. The answer? 90% of their success came from their psychology. So if 90% of their success comes down to their psychology, what was the one thing that enabled them to produce the results that others were not? Their ability to execute, their ability to get things done. Now, we all know how to get things done, but some of us do it better than others. And some of us are not even coming close to tapping our potential. So if you're truly committed to tapping your potential and really becoming a peak performer and getting the results that you need, want, and desire, take your phone and text the word BE Summit. That stands for Business Execution Summit. One word, BE Summit, and text that to 41411. I'm going to send out some additional information on our upcoming event that will truly teach you the science of execution. Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day. That concludes part 1 of our interview with Mike Agugliaro. Please stay tuned later this week for part 2.